Welcome to Payback with Silas. Every day, a new story, lies, betrayal, payback. Let's begin.
I didn't marry a cancer patient. I didn't sign up for this. That's what she said. I still remember every syllable, how cold, sharp, deliberate it sounded. No hesitation. No empathy. Just brutal clarity. It was a Tuesday in late October. The kind of day that starts out normal, lulls you into a false sense of routine. I had just come back from my doctor's appointment, gripping a manila envelope with a skin I didn't know how to read. But I already knew. The pain in my side wasn't just stress, like I'd told myself for months. I had stage 2 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Treatable, maybe even curable, but the road would be hell. I sat her down in our kitchen in Asheville. Fall light streamed through the big windows she picked out when we remodeled. I told her everything, the diagnosis, the plan, the hope. I expected tears. I expected questions. I expected something. Instead, she stared at me like I had just confessed to cheating on her. "You're telling me you're going to be sick? Like for months?" I nodded. "Yeah. Chemo. Possibly radiation. But the odds are..." "I can't do that," she interrupted. "I'm sorry. I didn't marry a cancer patient. I didn't sign up for this." It felt like the air got sucked out of the room. My ears rang. I waited for her to laugh, to say it was a sick joke. But she wasn't joking. Her expression didn't even flicker. "So what are you saying, Marin?" I asked, not recognizing my own voice. "I'm saying I'm not wasting the best years of my life babysitting someone who might not even make it out of this. I have a future. I'm not going to throw it away watching you rot." She packed a bag that night. Didn't even take the time to cry. I had never felt more abandoned, or more humiliated. There's a specific kind of shame that comes when someone who promised to love you in sickness and in health bails the second real life shows up. For the next few days, I sat in silence. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't call my parents. I didn't even eat. I just sat. It wasn't heartbreak. Not really. It was something colder. Heavier. Like grief. But not for her. For the version of me that still thought I was loved. When I finally dragged myself out of bed, something in me had changed. I didn't feel motivated. I wasn't angry yet. But there was a new kind of stillness, like I'd hit the bottom of a well and realized the only way out was up. That's the thing about being stripped of everything. You start to see who you really are beneath it all. And I wasn't done yet. People say chemo makes you feel like you're dying slowly. They're wrong. It makes you want to die slowly, because even that sounds more merciful. The first time I walked into the oncology center in Asheville, it felt like stepping onto a spaceship. Everything sterile, cold, humming with a low, constant whir of machines and forced optimism. Nurses smiled too brightly. The walls were painted in soft blues and greens like that was supposed to make the whole thing less terrifying. They called my name, Callum Reese, and that was it. No turning back. The chair was leather, or maybe fake leather, with cracks in the armrests. I sat down and looked across the room at a woman with a scarf tied around her head, knitting with hands that looked like twigs. She didn't look up. She'd clearly been through this more times than I had. They hooked the 4 into the port they'd installed in my chest 2 days before. I watched the clear fluid drip. Each drop felt like a tiny betrayal by my own body. I thought of Marin for some stupid reason. I thought about how she'd always hated hospitals. "Too many people waiting to die," she used to say. Funny. I was sitting there trying to live. The sickness didn't hit until the next day. At first, it was a headache. Then the nausea came, fast and relentless, like a wave that never stopped crashing. I couldn't keep food down. I couldn't sleep. My skin felt like it didn't fit right. One night, I sat on the bathroom floor, head against the cold tile, shaking so hard I thought I might pass out. I caught my reflection in the mirror, eyes sunken, skin gray, the ghost of a man I used to be. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of dying like this. Alone. Forgotten. Unfinished. And then something strange happened. I met Frankie. She was maybe in her late 50s, wore a motorcycle jacket over her hospital gown, and cursed like a sailor. First day I saw her, she was yelling at the TV in the chemo room. "You call that a quarterback? I've seen tighter spirals in a damn tornado." She noticed me staring and grinned. "What are you looking at, pretty boy?" I managed a weak laugh. "First time here." "Yeah, figured. You've still got hair." "Cute." Then she tossed me a protein bar. "Eat. You'll need it when the drugs turn your insides to jelly." She became my accidental mentor. Frankie had stage 4 breast cancer and zero fear of anything. We talked during every session. She told me about her past, bad marriages, a Harley she rebuilt herself, a daughter in New Mexico she hadn't spoken to in 5 years. She never pitted me. Never told me to stay strong. Just showed up and stayed real. One afternoon, mid-infusion, she leaned in and said, "You're lucky, you know." I blinked. "Come again?" "You're young. You've got time. When this crap is over, and yeah, you'll probably puke out your guts first, but when it's done, you get to start over. Most people don't get that." That stuck with me. Start over. I rolled those words around in my mouth like a pill I wasn't sure I wanted to swallow. What the hell would that even look like? My job had let me go 2 weeks into treatment. No one really called, except my older brother from Colorado, and even he didn't know what to say. I was a man with no marriage, no job, no hair, and no real reason to get out of bed, except one. Spite. Spite kept me moving. Spite for the disease. Spite for the job that dumped me. Spite for Marin, who chose her own freedom over my fight. I wasn't going to let this be the last chapter of my story. So between treatments, when I wasn't curled up next to the toilet, I started reading. Watching tutorials. Writing ideas on sticky notes, and plastering them all over my apartment like a mad scientist. Frankie would smirk every time she saw me scribbling into a notebook. "Whatcha doing, pretty boy?" "Figuring out how I'm going to build a company from scratch." She raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" "Dead serious." She grinned, wide and proud. "That's the stuff, Reese. That's the stuff." By the end of my 4th cycle, I was too weak to walk without leaning on the furniture. But in my head, I was building something. I didn't know exactly what yet. But I knew why. I was going to come back. Not just to survive, but to rise. And when I did, they'd all see. They say rock bottom has a basement. I believe them. By the end of my 5th chemo cycle, I was down to 141 pounds. My fingernails were yellow. My eyebrows had vanished. My skin had this waxy, half-dead sheen like something you'd see on a cadaver in a training hospital. But my mind was on fire. It started with an idea. Something simple. I'd worked in logistics before, nothing glamorous, just moving inventory, optimizing routes, managing warehouse data for mid-sized retailers. Boring to most, but I knew the pain points like the back of my hand. Most companies used outdated software, slow response times, poor integration with shipping APIs. So I thought, what if I built a streamlined SaaS platform for independent retailers? Something lightweight, intuitive, fast? I had no funding. No team. Just a dying laptop, spotty Wi-Fi, and this little corner in my apartment where I'd set up a folding table and a whiteboard I found in the dumpster behind an old preschool. I called it Hawkline. Sharp. Precise. Fast. I didn't care that it sounded like a defense contractor. I wanted the name to sound like I meant business, because I did. I worked through the night most nights. Not because I had energy, God, no. But because insomnia was constant, and the silence gave me space to breathe. I'd sleep in short bursts, curled up in the armchair beside the table, for scars still healing on my arms. I learned to code again, really code, not just read specs and manage teams like I did in my last job. I went back to basics. Front-end, back-end, server architecture, UI logic. I became obsessed. Sometimes I'd hallucinate from the meds or exhaustion. I once spent an hour trying to debug a CSS issue that didn't actually exist. But it didn't matter. Every line of code was a middle finger to cancer. Every database schema was a brick in the fortress I was building around the new version of myself. My apartment looked like a hacker cave. Cables everywhere. Dry erase scribbles on the windows. Notes taped to the fridge that said things like, "No one's coming to save you," and "They only believe you when you win." I lived on cheap soup and caffeine pills. The power got cut off once. I ran the whole build for a week from a battery bank and public Wi-Fi at a diner down the street. People thought I was losing my mind. I was. But I was losing the part that begged for comfort. That Callum died in the chemo chair. The man who remained was dangerous. Then came the first break. A guy I used to work with, Tomas Weiler, posted on LinkedIn about a supply chain issue his new startup was having. I hadn't spoken to him in years. I DM'd him, half expecting to get ghosted. He replied in 20 minutes. 3 days later, I showed him an early prototype. It was rough, barebones, ugly as hell, but it worked. Tomas was impressed. "Dude, you made this?" "Every line." He paused. "I'll be honest," he said. "I always thought you were just a process guy back at HollowPoint. But this? This is some real founder sh*t. I told him I wasn't looking for pity or handouts. I wanted a pilot customer, not a cheerleader. He gave me access to his data and agreed to test it. That night, I sat on my cot and stared at the ceiling for 2 straight hours. I wasn't crying. I wasn't laughing. I was becoming. Over the next few weeks, I kept pushing. Tomas's data helped me optimize the engine. Word started to spread, small startups, niche sellers, even a boutique fulfillment center out in Nevada reached out after Tomas posted about his results. I didn't even have a website yet. Just a product, a name, and a rage-fueled will that refused to let me die quietly. Around that time, I got a letter in the mail. From Marin. It was short. Handwritten. The first contact in nearly 8 months. "Callum, I heard you're doing well. I don't know what to say except, I'm sorry." I panicked. "I hope we can talk sometime. Maybe coffee?" "No. I miss you." "No. I was wrong." Just coffee. Like the past year had been a bad dream we could sip through. I folded the letter and dropped it in the trash. Not out of hate. Out of clarity. She left when I was ashes. Now that I was blueprint, she wanted back in. But I had already started building the foundation of something better. They don't tell you that success has its own kind of chemotherapy. It burns. It drains you. It forces you to kill off parts of yourself you thought were essential. Doubt, fear, hesitation, just to survive in a room full of sharks who smile with their teeth and never their eyes. After Tomas' pilot case, Hawkline picked up momentum. Small ones at first, 3 new clients, then 5. Word of mouth was my only currency, but it traveled faster than I expected. Still, everything ran on fumes. I couldn't scale. I needed infrastructure, servers, automation, customer support. Hell, I needed sleep. But most of all, I needed capital. So I started reaching out to angels. Most of them didn't answer. Some did, and offered condescending advice instead of funding. One guy told me to get a co-founder who doesn't look like they just climbed out of a casket. I smiled. Took a screenshot of the email. Saved it in a folder called Receipts. Then came Sienna Malik, a venture partner at Embernest Capital out of Raleigh. Sharp, clinical, eyes like glass. She responded to my cold pitch with a forward reply. "If it works, prove it." I sent her access to a live demo with real data. She scheduled a call the next morning. I was so damn nervous I nearly threw up again, and it wasn't the chemo this time. I shaved the little stubble I had, put on the only clean shirt that didn't smell like Red Bull, and practiced my pitch to an empty chair like it was the president of Earth. When she logged on, she didn't waste time. "Walk me through your value proposition in 2 minutes," she said. I did. No slides. No jargon. Just a raw, battle-tested pitch, how I built Hawkline to solve the logistics blind spots I used to watch companies drown in. I expected her to challenge every line. But halfway through, she leaned back and said, "Did you code this alone?" "Every line." "Your post-chemo, self-funded, and 5 clients deep?" "6, I said. "As of this morning?" She paused. Something in her expression shifted, not quite a smile, but not apathy either. And then she said it. "Come to Raleigh. Pitch in person. I'll get the others in the room." I rode a Greyhound bus for 5 hours with a busted backpack and a demo version of Hawkline loaded on a USB stick. The Embernest office looked like it had been ripped out of a tech bro fantasy. Neon logo wall, kombucha on tap, bean bags with a view of the skyline. I walked in with shaking hands and a stomach full of nothing but Tums and caffeine. There were 4 of them in the room. Sienna sat in the center, flanked by 2 men in tailored suits and 1 younger woman who never looked up from her tablet. I pitched like my life depended on it, because in a way it did. They asked brutal questions. Projections. Scale. Monetization. Risk. One of them scoffed at my lack of a co-founder. Another said, "Why hasn't this been done before?" Like it was a rhetorical kill shot. I didn't flinch. "Because people who've needed this were too busy surviving to build it," I said. "And people who could build it didn't give a damn." Sienna gave me a slow, almost imperceptible nod. 2 weeks later, the term sheet came in. $400,000 seed. Valuation, $2.2 million. No debt. No games. They wanted me. Me. The night I got the email, I sat on my floor in the dark, holding my phone like it was a detonator. I wasn't excited. I wasn't relieved. I was still. Deeply, dangerously still. Because I realized something. This wasn't the end of the fight. This was the beginning. I hired 2 contractors. Registered the company in Delaware. Moved out of my moldy apartment and into a tiny shared studio with industrial carpet and an air mattress I didn't even bother inflating all the way. Work didn't stop. Pressure exploded. Now I had expectations. But I also had power. And for the first time since Marin walked out that October night, I felt like I wasn't chasing the world anymore. It was chasing me. It happened on a Tuesday. Fitting. Tuesdays seemed to like circling back in my life, like vultures. I was in the middle of back-to-back onboarding calls with 2 new clients, one in Austin, the other in Spokane. Hawkline was gaining traction fast. We just crossed $30,000 MRR. I was operating out of a proper office now, nothing fancy, just a converted co-working space above a music store. Exposed brick, harsh lighting, terrible coffee. I had finally stopped waking up every day feeling like a man held together by spite and duct tape. And then came the knock. Not a text. Not a call. A knock. At the door of my apartment. I almost didn't answer. It was 9 p.m. I had been running on caffeine and stubbornness since sunrise. But something told me, open it. And there she was. Marin. Sane coat, I remembered. A little more makeup. Expensive purse, keys dangling from a Cartier keychain. But her eyes? They were hollow in a way I didn't expect. She smiled, hesitant. Like a kid trying to re-enter a house they'd run away from. "Hey, Cal." She used to call me that when things were good. Cal. Soft, like a nickname from a different life. I didn't move. She looked me up and down. I was leaner now. Harder around the eyes. No more hospital pallor. My hair was coming back in, a little darker, a little wilder. She hesitated. "I heard about Hawkline. I saw your name in that Forbes Upstart list. I mean, wow. You really..." She laughed awkwardly. "You really built something." Silence. Then, "Can I come in?" I leaned against the doorframe. "Why?" She blinked. "To talk." To explain. You explained enough, I said. Back in October. Remember? I didn't marry a cancer patient. Pretty hard to forget. She looked down. I was scared. So was I. You ran. I didn't. That landed. She swallowed hard. I made a mistake, she said. I thought I'd be spending my life waiting around for you to die. But you didn't. You fought. And now. Her voice cracked, too perfectly if I'm honest. You've become someone I don't even recognize. In a good way. You're stronger. You've always had potential, but now you're. Stop. She blinked. I didn't go through chemo, rebuild my body, lose my job, start a company from a damn couch, just to become a better man for you to come back to. Her face stiffened. I didn't come here to grovel. Then this'll be quick. I stepped aside, not to let her in. Just to show her the life behind me. Sparse, clean, focused. My world now. See that? That's peace. I built it while you were gone. She blinked rapidly. Her mouth opened like she wanted to fire back, say something sharp, something that could pierce the armor she thought I still wore. But I wasn't the man crying on the bathroom floor anymore. I had nothing left to defend. Only something to protect. Myself. She left quietly. No dramatic goodbye. No tearful. What could have been? Just heels down the hallway and a door that clicked shut like punctuation on a chapter one would never reread again. Later that night, Frankie called me. Yeah, Frankie. Still alive. Still cussing. Still somehow dodging the Reaper like she had a side deal going with Death himself. You sound lighter, she said. Someone die? Not quite. Ah. The ex came back, huh? I chuckled. How'd you know? They always come back once the blood stopped leaking. I laughed harder than I had in weeks. Deep, full. A laugh from a place inside me that had healed without me noticing. Did you let her in? She asked. No. Good, she said. You're finally learning. That night, I sat on my balcony, laptop open, city humming below. Emails pinged. Deals closed. Hawkline was expanding into the Midwest next quarter. But none of that brought me peace. The peace came from this. I had faced the worst version of myself, sick, alone, forgotten, and I had survived. Now, even love knocking on my door wasn't enough to unmake the man I had become. Revenge used to be the fire in my lungs. I wanted her to see me rise just so she could choke on her choice. I wanted every dollar, every headline, every success story to whisper, "You left too soon." But that's the thing about revenge. It burns hot and fast. And once the fire dies, you're left with nothing but silence and smoke. Unless you've built something in the ashes. 6 months after Mara knocked on my door, I stood in a glass elevator, watching the sun rise over downtown Charlotte. Hawkline had just signed a 7-figure partnership with a regional distribution chain, our biggest deal yet. We'd grown to a team of 24. We had an office with real desks. I had an assistant named Neve who reminded me to drink water and eat real food. My days were packed with meetings, strategy, and product reviews. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing something. I was creating something. I still got messages from people who knew me before the cancer. Old coworkers. A few distant relatives. Even Marin's sister once sent me a DM that just said, "Whatever you're doing, damn. She's been miserable ever since." But I never replied. Because that wasn't the point anymore. One morning, I found myself back at the oncology wing. Not as a patient. As a donor. Frankie had talked me into it. She was part of a new mentorship program, bringing in survivors who had rebuilt themselves to talk to those still in the fight. I was reluctant at first. But she said something that stuck. You can spend your life proving the past wrong, or you can use it to light the way forward. So I showed up. And I met a kid, 17, bald, hooked up to 2 IVs. Name was Deshaun. Bright eyes. Brutal diagnosis. He looked at me like I was something between a miracle and a myth. You really beat it? He asked. Yeah, I said. And then what? You just went back to normal life? I smiled. Not even close. After that, I made it part of my week. Quiet visits. Small talks. No press. No social media clout chasing. Just one survivor saying to another, "You're not done yet." One evening, as I left the hospital, I got a call. It was from a producer at a major business podcast. They wanted me to come on, talk about resilience, rebuilding, founding Hawkline from rock bottom. "We love comeback stories," he said. I hesitated. Then asked, "What if it's not a comeback? Sorry? What if I never left? What if this version of me was just waiting to be born, and the cancer, and the abandonment, just cleared the noise?" There was silence on the line. Then, "So you'll do it?" I smiled. "Yeah. I'll do it." The night before the recording, I sat alone on my balcony again. Same city. Same view. But I wasn't the same man. I didn't drink to celebrate. I didn't call anyone to share the news. I just sat quietly, breathing, watching the lights shimmer below me. Because now I knew, the real victory isn't making someone regret leaving. It's building a life so full, so solid, so deeply yours, that even you can't believe how far you've come. Marin became a footnote. The pain became a blueprint. And revenge? Revenge became irrelevant. Because dignity, peace, and purpose? They're better than revenge will ever be.